This is the thing where in the dynamic and the interplay of all of the various arguments, you have taken your issue with some arguments being raised and publicized that detract from the other ones. And this sort of works to segue into AG Barr's statement or interview yesterday or the day before. No widespread voter fraud that would affect the outcome of the election, which I just put a video out today, is a very interesting way of explaining it, because to say that there is no widespread voter fraud that would have otherwise affected the outcome of the election, I'm not playing with semantics and I'm not building straw man arguments. It necessarily means there was a certain degree, if not recognized, widespread voter fraud, but that they've made the determination it wouldn't affect the outcome, because otherwise you just don't phrase it like that. You say there was no voter fraud that would have affected the outcome, not no widespread voter fraud that would have affected the outcome. And it seems like you've mentioned it before, that it's such a big problem, and that it's a problem. It's sort of like the best kept secret in Washington that nobody wants to solve it. And so you have AG Barr, to some extent, sort of sweeping it under the rug or kicking it down the line to a different court, saying, regardless, this is not a DOJ issue, this is a civil lawsuit issue, but we've found some fraud, we just trust us, it's not big enough to affect the outcome, when the outcome is under 1% in 5 states, which affects everything. So, I mean, the absentee ballot issue is a new problem to some extent. It's the first time it's ever occurred in an election, I mean, to this extent.
And he himself just 2 months ago said it was going to be it was an invitation towards mass fraud. So I took it as two different things. As your video explained, the media deliberately misinterpreted what he said because he had 3 hedges there. His first hedge was to date we haven't found, so he was not ruling out finding it later. And then secondly, said, as you note, widespread voter fraud. Third, that caused the election to flip. And so he was, he had all these hedges built in. Now, my problem with Barr saying anything is Barr knew exactly how the media would interpret his statements. So Barr's not unsophisticated. He's very familiar with how this works. And notice what happened. So on Monday, Trump has a successful hearings in Arizona where independent people watching it, or people that were willing to be persuaded either way. I mean, my view is you have about a quarter to a third of Trump's base that will always believe the election was stolen and are looking for confirmation bias. So they're just looking for evidence or arguments that hear are what they want to hear. That's a lot of people that are in the Powell Wood camp. So no matter what is said, no matter how challengeable or contestable it may be, or how evidence-free it may be, they're jumping on it and running with it no matter what, because it's what they want to hear. It's the nature of confirmation bias. It's like the Russiagators of the left. But then the other 2/3, I think, are really open to persuasion. Maybe it had happened, maybe it didn't. They might lean in one direction or the other. But that group was all very persuaded by what they saw in Pennsylvania, and then was also persuaded again by what they saw in Arizona. And so what happens? The same Republican governor that just a few days before had said he would not be certifying the election until the litigation issues are resolved. And by this point, he knew the head of the Republican Party, Kelly Ward, in Arizona, had filed an election contest and was reviewing evidence. He rushes to certify the election. So this is the Republican establishment pushing back on Trump, trying to step on any success of Trump. Then the very next day, you have the Tuesday hearings in Michigan, and suddenly Barr feels the compelling need to just start yipping to the press about, clearly it's a joke at this stage. He hasn't done any investigation. The FBI hasn't done any investigation. They haven't even talked to 90% of the witnesses. So it's a crock for him to say he's investigated anything. All he was going to do was remind people who had wanted to believe in him that they were wrong to believe in him. That's all he did. But he's protecting the establishment, and I'm sure he'll get a nice cushy gig when he gets done.
Well, so there's 2 ways of looking at this. Some people are saying, my initial reaction was Barr sees the writing on the wall. He's trying to get in bed with the new establishments and not be cut on day one. Other people are going to say it's a distraction. They're doing something else behind the scenes while Barr, shows a shiny coin to the media. There's no positive spin on what Barr has said, except for the way it ought to be interpreted, in that the amount of qualifiers in the statement necessarily imply, and they mean that they found something, but they're just trying to reassure you. The same people, someone said this, who went after Carter Page for years, who falsified documents. That same party now, that same entity is telling you, yeah, we found fraud, but trust us, it wouldn't have affected the outcome. Where the outcome was, the difference was under 1% in 5 states. So there's no positive spin to it, but for the fact that the way in which it should be read. And it does mean that the DOJ and the FBI are really not doing anything to look into this in any meaningful sense.
Yeah, no, I mean, they only talked to Matt Brainerd a few days ago after Brainerd got a lot of attention, and it's because Brainerd's allegations are very concrete. The only allegations Barr took explicit pot shots at were Sidney Powell's allegations. So that was it. And to say that nothing like that is present, nothing like that is here, I didn't mind him saying that to a certain degree because it made clear that, people who think there's been servers seized in Germany, well, apparently it's news to Barr if that happened. So that gives anybody, I gave him credit for being honest and saying, we're not going to be helping you out any. Well, the FBI is not going to be coming to your rescue. The Justice Department is not going to be coming to your rescue. I mean, that's what he basically said. I mean, he just shouldn't have added the ancillary of we've investigated and there's no consequential fraud here that we can find to date. He should have just said, if he was honest, we have done no investigation. We plan on doing no investigation. So don't rely on us for any investigation. That would have been an honest Barr statement. But but it was evidence that he's not. And then he also at the same time released the fact that he had put Durham under special counsel.
No, it's well, and wait for the jokes, Barnes, to kick in the comment section.
Yes, indeed.
It's yeah. I mean, I read it. It gives the soundbite everyone needed that the media wanted to distract from everything else that's going on. But even the reference to the disguised reference to Sidney Powell's lawsuits, I have an issue with as well, in the sense that it's true. 3 months ago, he was the biggest liar on earth to the media when he was saying that this is ripe that this is fraught for fraud.
Both ripe and rife. It's ripe for rife fraud.
So he was the biggest liar in the world, and now he's the savior again. And I forget, it was this Marshall Cohen from CNN who said Barr lying in December, whatever. What month was it? The summer. July, lying then when he said there was risk, telling the truth now. It's lacking self-awareness, confirmation bias. But the fact that they could say, when you have an electronic server, that we're not even going to look into it, notwithstanding the history, notwithstanding the old footage that's coming up now of CNN 10 years ago, or maybe more, 14 years ago, having done its own expose on the risks of these machines, making a lot of the same allegations Sidney Powell is now making, but nothing to look into because it's 10 years later and it's still the same machine. It's it's bizarre. It's peculiar. I think definitely the more plausible interpretation is Barr is trying to cozy up to the new administration, and or just not let too many dirty secrets out, because there's only one person who benefits from that, whereas everybody benefits from the status quo to some extent.
Yeah, he's an institutionalist coming to the defense of the institutions. It turned out he, back in October, made Durham special counsel. People are allocating to that power that I don't quite see, because I don't see why Biden's attorney general can't come in and fire him. I mean, that's basically what Barr did. Barr told Mueller to shut it down. So he's not an independent counsel, so he's not separated from the control of the attorney general to do whatever they want. So unless I've missed something in the analysis, I didn't see great significance to that. It just required overt action of the new attorney general to shut him down. And that's all. It doesn't require anything else. And anyone who doesn't think that he will, all right. I mean, put it this way. If he doesn't shut him down, then he knows what a complete joke Durham is anyway. So if Durham poses an actual threat, they'll shut him down. If Durham does not pose an actual threat, then they'll let him, issue his little report a year from now or whenever it happens. So I didn't take that as a Barr compliment. And you saw Trump be critical of it today in his 46-minute speech. Because he put the plot against the election in the context of the plot against the president, from both the book by Lee Smith and the documentary movie by Adam Milius, whose father's a famous director. She was very nice to me when I was in D.C., when she was at the State Department for a good period of time. there are many Trump loyalists up there that tried to get power, but the reason why she left was the same reason others was because others never got that power. I mean, that's why we're here. But Trump went out of his way to say, yeah, they could harass me for 4 years, but somehow Durham couldn't get a simple report done. He was overt about it, and so he gave Barr the riot act yesterday.
Well, and what I love in a cynical sense is they spent 2-3 years with the Mueller report investigating the alleged Russia collusion, and there's not even so much as Bill Barr says we're running down some leads, but we know darn well they haven't. We know who they have not interviewed. We know what they have not investigated, but they found 3 years for the Russia collusion. And it's not to say I wasn't buying into the Russia collusion at the time, but you follow the report, you follow the investigation. To say that they investigated that with, scrutinizing everything for 3 years, but this just push it by, make sure it's the inauguration day and people will forget, it lacks credibility.
And my guess is, given the timing, like people thought Trump called Barr over. I suspect it was the other way around yesterday. I suspect that Barr thought he could step on this. All the establishment has believed that they could just push back against Trump and he would capitulate. I don't know why they thought that, given who he is. But it was clear when I was in Georgia, they thought that Trump's own lawyers thought they could force him into capitulation. The lawyers really secretly had a conflict working for the Secretary of State's office, were complicit in the signature match problems in that the consent decree they signed with the Stacey Abrams backed group. So I think their whole game plan all along has been, we'll just force him to fold at the key juncture. We'll force him to fold. The media pressure, our internal pressure, when he sees no allies in the judiciary, no allies in the Senate, no allies in the state legislatures of power and influence, and those the state legislative leaders, majority leaders and whatnot, that when he sees that, he'll just capitulate. And I think Trump pushed back against Barr in person yesterday, and that's why he came out, decided to do his speech today. Said, this has been a 4-year effort to undermine me and 4-year effort to break the law to rig an election, and try to cast a shadow on the last one. And so I'm not going anywhere until we get a meaningful, free, open, transparent election process. And I think that the people who thought he was going to go away are just not. They're just in la la land. Now he's not doing what the revival rally that Lynn Wood and Sidney Powell had in Georgia. That's another.
Well, so it's a good segue, because I don't understand the impact of that, and it'll be a good way to we'll talk about the recent developments in the Sidney Powell Lynn Wood lawsuits, and then that